The War Council chamber buzzed with anticipation as the galaxy's most powerful generals gathered to address a pressing matter. General Xyrith stood at the center, his towering reptilian frame casting long shadows against the shimmering walls. His voice, sharp and guttural, silenced the room as he slammed his clawed fist on the table. For centuries, we have tested the mettle of countless species. Many have faced the beast, yet none have conquered it. And now, the humans, these fragile creatures, dare to demand a seat at the table? His words dripped with contempt, eliciting murmurs of agreement from the assembly. A holographic image flickered to life, displaying the beast. Its massive form, jagged scales, and fiery eyes were enough to send shivers down the spines of even the bravest warriors. This is no ordinary trial. This is survival at its rawest. Only the strongest have even survived the encounter, and they were broken beyond repair. Humanity will be no exception. The murmurs grew louder, but the door at the far end of the chamber slid open, drawing everyone's attention. Captain Jackson Grant strolled in, hands casually tucked into the pockets of his standard-issue uniform. His confident, almost bored demeanor clashed starkly with the tension in the room. He stopped in the middle of the chamber, glanced at Xyrith, and smirked. "So, I heard there's a puppy you want me to meet?" Grant's voice was light, even playful, which only fueled the disdain in Xyrith's eyes. "Puppies?" Xyrith snarled, his tail lashing against the floor. "You mock this trial, human?" No mocking. Just perspective," Grant replied, shrugging. "Where I come from, we don't panic before we've met the dog, dragon, or whatever it is." The council erupted into whispers. Xyrith's scales flared slightly, his frustration barely contained. "You speak as if this is a mere jest. Do you understand the gravity of what you're about to face?" Grant tilted his head, feigning deep thought. "Grave enough for me to show up. Not so grave that I'm losing sleep over it. Let's cut the theatrics. You've got a beast, I've got a schedule. Let's do this." The murmurs turned into outright confusion. One alien leaned toward another, his antennae twitching. "Are all humans this strange?" Ignoring the chatter, Grant tapped his comm device, opening a direct line to his translator AI. "Any advice?" he muttered under his breath. "None relevant, Captain," the AI replied smoothly. "However, the probability of survival against this opponent is below 30%. Great odds." "I love an underdog story," Grant quipped, before turning back to Xyrith. "The trial will proceed in the arena," Xyrith announced, his voice cutting through the noise. "You will face the beast with nothing but your wits. There will be no assistance, no weapons. Humanity's worth will be judged by your actions alone." Grant raised a finger. "Quick question. Has anyone tried just talking to the thing?" The silence that followed was deafening. Xyrith's eyes narrowed, his claws clicking ominously against the metal floor. "You continue to mock us. The beast does not listen. It does not reason. It only destroys. Got it? So no one's tried. Noted." Grant turned toward the door that led to the arena, his relaxed demeanor a sharp contrast to the ominous energy of the chamber. As he walked away, a younger alien whispered to his superior, "Do you think he even understands what's about to happen?" The superior, a grizzled veteran, shook his head. "He doesn't care. That's the terrifying part." In the vast arena, preparations were underway. Alien spectators filled the seats, their voices a cacophony of anticipation. For many, this was a mere formality. They had already written off humanity as doomed. The beast's reputation was too fearsome, its power too absolute. From the council chamber's viewing deck, Xyrith watched as Grant entered the arena. He couldn't shake the gnawing irritation that the human had failed to display any fear. "This is arrogance," Xyrith muttered to himself. "It will be his undoing." Grant, meanwhile, stood in the center of the arena, stretching casually as if he were warming up for a morning jog. He scanned the massive structure around him, taking in the towering gates, the ornate carvings, and, most importantly, the roaring crowd. He gave a mock bow, earning confused glances from the spectators. The gates at the far end began to open, gears grinding as a low growl echoed through the arena. The beast emerged, its sheer size enough to cast a shadow over Grant. It moved with a predatory grace, its scales glinting under the artificial light, each step reverberating through the ground. Grant tilted his head, studying the creature.
Ha!
Definitely bigger than a puppy, he muttered, the remark lost in the collective gasp of the crowd. The beast roared, a sound so powerful it seemed to shake the very air. The alien spectators leaned forward, their breaths held in anticipation. Surely now, they thought, the human would show fear. But Grant simply stood his ground, hands on his hips. After the roar subsided, he let out a low whistle. Impressive. You've got some pipes on you? The arena fell silent, the moment stretching as the beast locked eyes with its supposed prey. From the viewing deck, Zyrith clenched his fists. This was not how trials usually began. And yet, despite the mounting tension, Grant's expression didn't change. If anything, he seemed curious. The beast towered over Grant, its massive form an awe-inspiring combination of power and ferocity. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, scanning him with a predatory intensity. Its claws dug into the arena floor, leaving deep grooves in the metal as it began to circle him. The crowd sat in stunned silence, waiting for the inevitable moment when the human would falter, flee, or be torn apart. Grant, however, didn't move. His posture remained loose, his expression calm. He observed the creature intently, his eyes darting over its movements. The way it tilted its head, the flick of its tail, the subtle shifts in its stance, they weren't random. They were patterns, signs. The beast lunged suddenly, its massive jaws snapping shut inches from Grant's position. The crowd gasped, and even Zyrith leaned forward in anticipation. But Grant didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped back just enough to avoid the strike, his movements deliberate and precise. "All right, big guy," he muttered under his breath. "What's your deal?" The beast paused, its head lowering slightly as it studied him in return. It huffed, a low growl rumbling deep in its throat, but it didn't attack again. Its massive tail swayed behind it, crushing a fallen section of the arena floor. Grant crouched slightly, keeping his movements slow and unthreatening. He extended one hand, palm out, a gesture universally understood by Earth's animals. The beast tilted its head, the glow in its eyes dimming slightly as it hesitated. "You're not just a mindless monster, are you?" Grant said softly. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You're angry, sure. Confused, maybe. But not mindless." The crowd murmured, their confusion growing. Why wasn't the beast attacking? Why was the human standing there, speaking as if the creature could understand him? Zyrith's claws tapped impatiently against the viewing deck railing. "What is he doing?" he growled. The beast should have destroyed him by now. In the arena, Grant took a step forward. The beast's growl deepened, its muscles tensing as if preparing to strike. But Grant didn't stop. He lowered himself slightly, keeping his movements measured, and spoke again. "I get it. They've probably been parading you around, calling you a monster, forcing you into these fights. But you don't want this, do you? You're just trying to survive, same as the rest of us." The beast's head tilted further, its growl tapering off into a low rumble. It sniffed the air, its massive nostrils flaring as it caught Grant's scent. For a moment, the tension in the arena shifted. The crowd leaned in, their collective breath held as they watched the impossible unfold. The beast, the terror of the galaxy, the unstoppable force that had crushed entire armies, was hesitating. Grant took another step, then another, until he was close enough to see the fine details of the beast's scales. "There we go," he murmured. "You're not so scary up close, are you?" The beast lowered its head slightly, its eyes narrowing as it regarded him. Grant reached into his pocket and pulled out a small protein bar, unwrapping it slowly. The crinkle of the wrapper echoed through the silent arena. "Don't know if this is your thing, but it's all I've got," he said, holding the bar out. The beast sniffed it cautiously, its massive jaws just inches from Grant's hand. The crowd erupted into whispers, disbelief rippling through the stands. And then, to the shock of everyone watching, the beast gently took the bar from his hand. It chewed slowly, its glowing eyes never leaving Grant's face. Xyrath slammed his fist against the viewing deck railing, his frustration boiling over. This is not a trial. This is mockery. The beast is to be fought, not fed. But the spectators weren't listening. Their focus was entirely on the arena, where the human was now casually scratching the underside of the beast's jaw. The creature emitted a low, rumbling sound, something between a growl and a purr. "There it is," Grant said with a grin. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" The beast responded by nudging him with its massive head, nearly knocking him over. The crowd's confusion gave way to scattered laughter, disbelief turning into amusement. Grant stepped back, taking a moment to assess the situation. The beast was no longer a threat, at least not to him. He glanced up at the viewing deck, locking eyes with Xyrath, and gave a casual shrug. "Not bad for first meeting, huh?" he called out. Xyrath's eyes burned with fury. This wasn't how the trial was supposed to go. This wasn't how it ever went. The human was supposed to be crushed, to prove once and for all that humanity was unworthy. But now, the entire council was watching, their expressions shifting from skepticism to something far more dangerous: respect. The beast lay down beside Grant, its massive tail curling around its body. It watched him with an almost docile expression, the fire in its eyes dimmed to a warm glow. Grant leaned against its side, arms crossed, as if he were lounging on a sofa. "Well," he said, his voice carrying across the arena, "I think we're getting along just fine. What's next?" The crowd erupted into cheers and laughter, their earlier tension dissolving into a kind of exhilaration. The spectacle they had anticipated had turned into something entirely different, something no one could have predicted. Xyrath, however, was far from amused. He turned to his advisors, his voice a low snarl. "This is not over. The trial is far from complete." In the arena, Grant patted the beast's side, a satisfied grin on his face. "Good boy," he muttered. The uproar in the arena gradually settled, but the weight of the moment lingered. Grant leaned against the beast's massive flank, exuding a confidence that bordered on arrogance. The crowd, once bloodthirsty and expectant, now looked on with a mixture of bewilderment and admiration. Whispers echoed through the stands, alien voices grappling with what they had just witnessed. Xyrath stood rigid in the viewing deck, his composure strained. He turned sharply to one of his advisors, a smaller, insectoid being. "Prepare the contingency. This display cannot stand. The trial demands conflict, not farce." Down in the arena, Grant casually stretched, glancing at the beast beside him. "So, big guy," he muttered, "any other tricks up your sleeve? Or are we just hanging out for the rest of this trial?" The beast huffed softly, its massive body shifting as it settled further onto the arena floor. Grant chuckled. "Yeah, that's what I thought. You're not the bad guy here." Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled. Grant straightened, his instincts kicking in as he scanned the arena. The massive gates from which the beast had emerged began to grind open once more, but this time, the sound was harsher, more deliberate. The crowd fell silent, their collective anticipation turning to unease. From the shadows beyond the gates came a second creature, even larger than the beast. Its frame was bulkier, its scales darker, and its eyes burned with unrestrained malice. The air seemed to thicken as it entered, its steps echoing like thunder. The beast beside Grant stiffened, a low growl rumbling deep in its chest. Grant took a step back, his eyes narrowing. I see. You've got a backup plan. Should have guessed." Xyrath's voice boomed from the speakers, lining the arena. "The trial continues. Let us see if humanity can tame this foe as well." His words dripped with mockery, and a ripple of approval moved through the spectators. The new creature roared, its bellows shaking the arena. Unlike the first beast, this one didn't hesitate. It charged, claws tearing into the ground as it barreled toward Grant and the original beast. Grant moved instinctively, diving to the side as the new creature lunged. The first beast roared in response, meeting the charge head-on. The impact was deafening, the clash of their massive forms sending shockwaves through the arena. Grant scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. "All right, two's a crowd," he muttered, watching as the two creatures grappled, their roars echoing across the stadium. The first beast, his unlikely ally, was holding its own, but the sheer ferocity of its opponent was undeniable. "Stay with me, big guy," Grant muttered, his eyes darting around the arena. He needed a plan. The second creature was clearly more aggressive, its movements erratic and unpredictable. But it wasn't invincible. Nothing ever was. As the two beasts clashed, Grant noticed something, a faint shimmer along the second creature's neck, a patch where its scales were thinner, almost translucent. A weak spot. "All right," Grant said, his tone sharp. "Time to earn my keep." He whistled sharply, drawing the first beast's attention. "Hey, buddy. Keep it distracted." The beast seemed to understand, redoubling its efforts against its opponent. Grant sprinted toward the edge of the arena, dodging debris and stray swipes from the battling creatures. He reached a pile of rubble left behind from previous trials, grabbing a jagged metal shard. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Grant climbed onto the first beast's back, gripping its thick scales for support. The creature didn't resist, as if it understood his intentions. "Let's finish this," Grant muttered, holding the shard tightly. The first beast lunged, slamming its opponent into the ground. The second creature roared in fury, thrashing wildly, but its movements left its neck exposed. Grant didn't hesitate. He leapt from the first beast's back onto the second creature, landing precariously near its weak spot. The crowd gasped as he drove the shard into the exposed area, putting all his strength behind the strike. The second creature roared, its movements faltering. It thrashed violently, trying to shake Grant off, but he held on, driving the shard deeper. Finally, with one last, shuddering roar, the creature collapsed, its massive body slumping against the arena floor. Grant rolled off, landing hard but quickly scrambling to his feet. He turned to the first beast, which stood tall and victorious. He grinned, giving it a thumbs up. "Nice work, partner." The crowd erupted into cheers, their earlier skepticism replaced with awe. Even Zyrith seemed momentarily speechless, his plans unraveling before his eyes. Grant leaned against the first beast, catching his breath. "Well, that was fun. What's next?" he called out, his voice carrying across the arena. The spectators roared in approval, their cheers shaking the very walls of the stadium. For the first time, the galaxy's most powerful warriors saw humanity not as fragile or weak, but as resourceful, fearless, and, above all, capable of the impossible. The arena fell into a charged silence as the second creature's body lay motionless, the dust settling around its massive frame. Grant stood beside the first beast, both of them breathing heavily from the effort. The crowd, now fully invested, roared their approval, a cacophony of voices from dozens of species echoing across the stadium. Grant straightened, brushing the dirt from his suit, and glanced up at the viewing deck where Zyrith stood. The alien general's expression was a mix of fury and disbelief, his claws digging into the railing. "Well, Zyrith," Grant called out, his voice carrying effortlessly across the arena. "Was that good enough for you? Or do you have another surprise waiting in the wings?" Zyrith snarled, his composure cracking. "This trial is not about your clever tricks or your lucky survival, human. It is about proving your worth, and I am far from convinced." Grant smirked, leaning casually against the beast's side. "Oh, come on. You're just mad your pets like me better." He gave the beast a friendly pat, earning a low rumble of approval. The audience burst into laughter, their earlier bloodlust now replaced with genuine amusement and respect. The shift in their mood was palpable. They weren't here for slaughter anymore. They were here for a spectacle, and Grant had delivered. Zyrith slammed his fist onto the control panel beside him, and the arena's floor began to shift once more. Massive sections of the ground separated, revealing glowing energy pits that radiated heat and light. The audience gasped as new obstacles emerged, spiked pillars, rotating blades, and electrified barriers. "You think this is over?" Zyrith growled. The trial is not merely about defeating your foes. It is about endurance, adaptability, and survival. Let us see how you fare in the true test of the arena. Grant sighed, running a hand through his hair. Of course, there's more. Why wouldn't there be? He turned to the beast, which was already watching the shifting terrain with wary eyes. All right, buddy, he said, his tone soft. Looks like we've got one last round. You up for it? The beast let out a low growl, stepping closer to him. Grant grinned. That's what I thought. The obstacles began to move, the arena transforming into a deadly maze of traps and hazards. Grant and the beast moved in tandem, their partnership fluid and instinctive. The beast smashed through barriers and leapt over pits, while Grant darted through narrow gaps and disabled traps with quick thinking and improvised tools. The crowd watched in awe as the unlikely duo navigated the gauntlet with precision and determination. Every close call, every narrow escape only added to the tension, and by the time they reached the final section, the arena was electric with anticipation. At the center of the maze stood a massive control tower, its surface covered in alien technology. Grant recognized it immediately. It was the key to ending the trial. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The path was guarded by automated drones, their weapons humming with energy as they hovered menacingly. Grant crouched behind a fallen pillar, assessing the situation. All right, big guy, he whispered to the beast.
Here's the plan.
I'll draw their fire. You circle around and take them out. Think you can handle that? The beast rumbled in agreement, its golden eyes locked onto the drones. Grant nodded, gripping a makeshift shield he had fashioned from debris. All right then, let's do this. He bolted from cover, drawing the drone's attention. Energy blasts sizzled past him as he zigzagged across the arena, his shield deflecting the few shots that came too close. The beast moved silently through the shadows, its massive form deceptively agile. When the first drone turned to follow Grant, the beast struck, its powerful jaws snapping the machine in half. The crowd roared as the remaining drones turned their attention to the new threat, giving Grant the opening he needed. He sprinted toward the control tower, dodging stray blasts and leaping over obstacles. Reaching the base, he began climbing, his hands finding purchase on the alien structure's ridges. The drones, distracted by the beast, didn't notice him until it was too late. At the top of the tower, Grant found a glowing control panel. He studied it for a moment, his fingers hovering over the strange symbols. All right, let's see if I can figure this out, he muttered. Behind him, the beast let out a triumphant roar, the last drone falling in pieces to the ground. Grant grinned, glancing down at his partner. Nice work. Focusing back on the panel, he pressed a series of buttons, trusting his instincts. The arena rumbled as the traps powered down, the glowing pits dimming and the obstacles retracting. The trial was over. Grant climbed down, landing with a soft thud beside the beast. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices shaking the stadium. Grant raised a hand, acknowledging their applause, before turning his gaze to Zyreth. The alien general looked utterly defeated, his shoulders slumped as he realized he had no further moves to make. Grant smiled, a mix of triumph and satisfaction. So, he called out, do I get the job, or do you want to throw another monster at me? Zyreth glared at him, but he couldn't deny the truth. The human had not only survived the trial, but had done so with ingenuity, courage, and an undeniable charisma that had won over the audience. Grant patted the beast one last time, his grin widening. Told you it'd be fine, he said softly. The beast rumbled in response, a sound that could only be described as approval. As the arena gates opened to signal the end of the trial, Grant walked forward, the beast following close behind. The crowd's cheers grew louder, their admiration for the human and his unlikely ally undeniable. Zyreth watched them go, his claws tapping against the railing. This was not the outcome he had anticipated, but he couldn't ignore what he had witnessed. Humanity had proven itself in the most unexpected way, and Grant had left a mark that no one would soon forget.